On this special episode of Corporate Access, we'll put the spotlight on one of Nigeria's leading food and agro-allied companies, Flour Mills of Nigeria. The chairman of the company, John Coumantaros, speaks to CNBC Africa about their growth and expansion plans, where Flour Mills of Nigeria is looking to scale production in Nigeria and tap the wider African market through export, and more importantly, add value to the agricultural value chain on the continent. I'm Akin Obakeye. So let's get into this story.
Well, thank you, Akin, and it's a pleasure to be here with CNBC Africa. And I'd just like to say that Flour Mills of Nigeria was founded by my father on September 29, 1960, 2 days before independence, when the nation was 35 million people. And today, here we are, 64 years later, and 220 plus million people. And we have expanded over that time from being a single flour mill to being a company with a $2.5 billion turnover and 19,000 Nigerians directly and indirectly employed, with factories in 14 states. That's factories, not warehouses. We have warehouses in all the states. And we are producing food from grains, starches, sweeteners, oils and fats, and proteins. So from maize, soybean, wheat, from all the different grains products, from sugar, from starch, from cassava. And we produce food really from farm or from supply chain, produced all in Nigeria and sold branded under the Golden Penny and other brands that we've developed over the last 64 years. So this has been an incredible journey, and it's a journey that's reaching a watershed point. And these businesses have grown, each of them in their own right, to tremendous proportions, and they all now need a focused investment for their growth. For example, in the sugar value chain, we have farms in Sunti, and we want to expand our production and our cultivation, and that's going to require about $500 million over the next 5 years to do that, so we can get to 500,000 tons of locally produced sugar. So that has a very different requirement than, let's say, our fast-moving consumer foods business, which is focused on developing and building its distribution outlets and capabilities, using data at the forefront, so we can really service consumers by having all our products in the 150,000 points of sale at all times. So there's a variety of investments that are needed in each of these businesses. And we chose this point in time to say, well, it's time to take the company private, put the businesses in their proper verticals, and then give them the capital, attract the capital, and the technical expertise that's necessary to grow each of these businesses into not only expanding needs in Nigeria, but potentially also Pan-African agro-allied and food businesses. But our primary interest right now is how we gather the capital to invest $1 billion over the next 5 years in Nigeria to grow these businesses.
Being here for 64 years, it shows that you understand the Nigerian market. You've understood what exactly, using innovation, to drive your product sales. And then you've seen massive turnovers over the years. And this also speaks to the fact that the Nigerian market is not as a lot of people think it is. For a business to survive for this long and then still plans to stay for another 100 years and more, it shows how valuable it is. But let's speak to how this would help drive the growth that you need.
Well, let's start with the first part of the question. I mean, I think our resilience over this past 64 years is really because we've developed a very rugged supply chain. And in the world in which we live in, it's very important these days to have a strong supply chain. You see that everything is really about the supply chain. We've had COVID, we've had, disruptions of international wars and so on. We've had many, many things that upset the supply chain, and you're only as good as your weakest link. So what we've tried to do at FMN is we've gone backwards into the supply chain. I mean, we believe that you really have to be not only present in the market that you serve, but you have to have a very strong supply chain in that market. So we've gone very strongly into developing maize high-yielding seeds, hybrid, not GMO, hybrid seeds, along with the agronomics to be able to produce maize that is 5 or 6 tons per hectare. Maybe even have some protein, high protein maize actually in that can produce the effect of protein, and soybean the same thing, and in wheat. So we've gone back even to the point of agricultural development and investment to see how we can double the yield of Nigerian farmers. Because if our Nigerian farmers don't produce sufficient raw materials, then our factories can't produce. And then, of course, innovating new products that are based on locally produced goods, where we have cassava, soybean, maize, is also part of our plan.
How well this, in terms of your relationship, in terms of making Nigeria the homegrown, in terms of the whole agricultural production, and how this would help you achieve the Pan-Africanism that you're looking at?
Well, it's an excellent question. I mean, developing the supply chain here in Nigeria, you have to make sure that the supply chain. I mean, this will help us obviously in exports to the region, and really an expansion. You do it in a series of steps. You don't go and build factories in Senegal. You try your exports first. You see what is working. You build some presence in the market. You test things. And then you start to build the critical infrastructure that's necessary. And, whether that's a factory, a mill, pasta line. And then you see, well, where am I going to get my packaging from? Am I going to source it from Bagco here with ECOWAS and AFCTA? And then you say, all right, well, what does Senegal produce that's good? And if we've had a successful variety of seed over here, how can that be given to the Senegal? So I think you kind of, the model is really to, gain a foothold in each of these countries, and you would expand really in West Africa first, because that's a more regional thing. And how you get a foothold in these countries, and with exports at first, so that we make Nigeria competitive in the region, and then you build your production footprint accordingly after that, and your distribution, which of course is critical. But you've done that with the test of the export. So if you can have good distribution, product awareness, then you work on building critical infrastructure.
In terms of the model you want to adopt, looking at this expansion, you've re-engineered your model with innovation in Nigeria over the last 64 years. So going into this market shows that there's some level of trust in what you've done over the years in terms of the business model. So walk us through how you're looking to penetrate these markets, in terms of your strategy, in terms of your innovation, in terms of your offerings, to this market. I mean, for example, the ingredients you use in cooking Nigeria's jollof rice, it's still a major argument across West Africa. Are we going to see where we have key products of flour mills, used here in Nigeria in terms of customer or consumer perception about this product now? How are you looking to double that down across the other markets you're looking at penetrating?
Well, it's a very good question. We developed Semovita almost 40 years ago here in Nigeria, and when it first came, Semovita is you take it, you extract it from part of the grain kernel, and you get 3 or 4% out of the. Instead of making flour 100%, you get Semovita, semolina. And at first, it wasn't accepted in the Nigerian market. And our sales manager said to my father, he said, when is management going to stop this silly pursuit of trying to sell this product? And my father said, when it's successful, that's when we'll stop. And of course, the semolina it's a bowl food, right? And bowl foods are consumed in everyday life, whether it's yams or cassava, fufu and gari and everything. It's a daily part of life. So why wouldn't protein based bowl food really succeed? And of course, it did succeed. But when you look at the rest of Francophone West Africa, bowl foods are not eaten in those parts of the country. So can you introduce that? That's a question. That's really up for the marketeers and the consumer value proposition folk to give us an opinion. So, you will adopt things according to what the consumers want, or that you think they may want, right? According to the habits and customs of each area. So, we have a lot of things that we have to do still here to grow the business in Nigeria. We've been working on cassava starch, which is a very, Nigeria produces 40 million plus tons of cassava tubers, roots, which is about 10 million tons of finished product. And how can we convert this in an industrial way to make starch locally? And we've been working on it. We have a starch plant, but we haven't gotten to the point where we can build a 100,000 ton plant a year. So this is something that we want to get it right at the smaller scale. And, one might need technical partners from Thailand or somewhere where they've done it successfully to come in and help us with their knowledge. And with our knowledge of the local conditions of how you source the tubers and how you source the aggregation, that's what's going to make a winning combination. So this verticalization, this privatization of the business will allow us to do that, to invite the best in class, to really build a world-class cassava starch business for export and to stop imports, to replace imports with a very cost-competitive product. And then from cassava starch, you can go to sucrose, you can go to glucose, and to sorbitol, which is into, so there's a lot of, developments that can go on from there that are very exciting. But this needs resources. It needs money, time, effort, technical expertise. So that's why we're focusing on really having these verticals. And that's why we're at a watershed moment in our history. And it really is a redoubling of our commitment and our belief in the Nigerian growth story. Because we believe that we're going to be spending about $1 billion in the next 5 years in Nigeria to build our Nigerian businesses.
With a robust plan to grow the business in Nigeria, Flour Mills believes Nigeria remains a viable market they plan to operate in years to come. Now that's all from us on this episode. I'm Aki Obakeye. Thank you for watching.